Today's episode is one of inspiration. It's a look at the lives of a few individuals, people you are probably familiar with, but you may not know their full story, the backstory. It's an episode to come back to whenever you're faced with challenges or life just seems a bit heavy and you're not certain how you're going to get through things or how you're going to make ends meet. I can give you processes and steps to get out of your way, get out of your head, to get going and get into action. But often, it's through the stories of others that we find our inspiration and our belief. This episode is a testament to the human spirit, a testament to possibilities. And it begins now. Welcome to Shift or Get Off the Pot, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and into action so you can make your dreams your reality. Let's get to it. If you're ever in need of a little inspiration, or maybe a bit more, maybe you just need a good old kick in the butt to get out of a slump or to get fired up, I find that it is incredibly helpful to put on some music and to just get moving. And I also think it's helpful to read biographies. Biographies about people you admire, people who have done some incredible things in life. Inspirational stories can often be just what we need to give ourselves a bit of a boost. And I think it helps to know the backstory or the behind the scenes of what it took for people to achieve their dreams. Because when you know the stories of people who have been through similar or perhaps even much harder struggles, well, let's face it, it makes it much easier to get our own selves fired up and to push past excuses, to get back on the horse or to get in the game and to just go for it. Inspirational stories and music as well, they can help us to focus and they can help us to realize that what we want is within reach, no matter how difficult the circumstances. So it is in that spirit that I have a few inspirational stories for you today. And I hope that these encourage you to keep going when things feel tough and to realize that there is a way, there is always a way, that if you truly want something, you have to be disciplined and determined to go after it. So the first is a story I read probably about 20 years ago after this gentleman won an Academy Award. And it's about a man, I'm not even going to mention his name yet. Instead, I will give you a couple of hints. See if you can guess this. You know him as the voice of Darth Vader in Star Wars. And you know him as the voice of Mufasa in The Lion King. He had a commanding voice, a distinguished voice. But did you know that the man behind that iconic voice was once a stutterer? He most definitely had a speech impediment. The man with that voice was James Earl Jones. And he was more than a stutterer. As he said, he was mute for nearly 10 years. And yet, he went on to become a multiple award-winning actor. He won an Emmy, an Oscar, a Grammy, and a Tony. He went from being a child with no voice to someone being known as the voice. His story is impressive. Definitely, it's impressive, but it's also a testament to the human spirit, to determination and discipline. James Earl Jones didn't just stumble over a few words here and there. He actually stopped talking altogether. He gave up because he simply couldn't get the words out. He had what he considered to be sort of a traumatic childhood. His parents had separated before his birth, and he was raised by his grandparents on a farm that had been in the family for years. But when he was 5 years old, the family moved to Michigan. And the trauma of leaving his birthplace and moving to a completely different state, well, it quite literally shut him down. And as he said, he gave up trying to talk. So his first year of school, he was mute. And he remained that way for years, up until high school. High school. Can you imagine? That's 10 years of your life. 10 years of your life. And he didn't speak. In fact, he just refused to speak more than a few words at a time, even to his family. In school, he pretended to be mute. He spoke only through his writing. But that all changed in high school when a teacher had asked the students to write a poem for class. Now, Jones said later in an interview that his teacher saw through his insecurities, and he believed that he could overcome the stuttering. So he accused him of plagiarism. He told him that he didn't believe that he wrote the poem because it was just too good. And he said that the only way that he could prove that he wrote the poem was to get up in front of the class and recite it from memory. Well, James Earl Jones stood up and vocally recited the poem word for word, surprising everyone, including himself, that he actually could speak without stuttering. He then went on to compete in high school debates and oratorical contests. He even won a public speaking contest and a scholarship to the University of Michigan. A lot of hard work later, he became an Oscar-winning actor. And more than that, obviously, he went on to win multiple awards. But in interview after interview, he said that the stutter never really left him. The voice that became so iconic was due to the fact that he very carefully and deliberately chose his words so that he wouldn't stutter. James Earl Jones's story is an inspiration to anyone who has ever felt limited by their weaknesses, which really isn't that all of us? Your weakest muscle, when exercised, has the possibility of becoming your strongest muscle. Another inspiring story I love also involves an actor. In fact, there are a lot of stories about actors and athletes that are incredibly motivating. This one is about Sylvester Stallone, and you may know the story that he wrote the movie Rocky with the intent of acting in it. But did you know that at the time he wrote it, he was broke? In fact, he was so broke that he sold his wife's jewelry and then he sold his dog. He sold his dog for just $25, just so he could get through another day or two. And then one evening, after watching Muhammad Ali in a boxing match, he had a vision for a movie about boxing. And he sat down and he feverishly wrote. And he wrote that movie in just 3.5 days. He wrote the entire movie, Rocky. Studios wanted it, and they offered him $125,000 for the script. Now, you would think that for someone who is broke, $125,000 would sound pretty nice. But they didn't want him to act in it. They wanted a well-known actor. And Stallone held out because he wrote that role for himself. Then he was offered $250,000 for the script, $500,000 or $250,000. But again, he held out. Despite being broke, he was determined to act in the movie that he wrote. And at one point, he was even told that he would never get a role because he just looked and talked funny. But that did not stop him from holding on to his dream. Finally, the studio agreed, and they gave him just $35,000 for the script, but they let him star in it. Well, you know the story. Rocky went on to win several Oscars, and Stallone was nominated for Best Actor. Did you know that Rocky was even inducted into the American National Film Registry as one of the greatest movies ever? Stallone wasn't even a screenwriter before he wrote Rocky. And the rest, as they say, is history. All because he didn't give up. He refused to give up. And do you know he went back and he bought his dog back for $15,000? Okay, I will leave you with one more. And this is about my absolute favorite motivational speaker. This is a man named Les Brown. I read Les's story after hearing him speak at a sales convention probably about, 30 years ago. Les and his twin brother were born in an abandoned building, and they were given up for adoption. They were raised by a single mother who was on welfare for their entire childhood. And Les often tells the story of how he struggled in school and he was held back twice. He was told that he had a learning disability, and frankly, he would just never amount to much of anything. If you have never had the pleasure of hearing Les Brown speak, do yourself a favor, go to YouTube and pull up some of his talks. He tells a funny story about working in a radio station, which ultimately led to his start as a speaker. Les Brown has gone on to become one of the most successful and most respected motivational speakers in history. And for years, he has inspired millions of people globally. It is well worth your time to listen to him to speak. His is also a story of determination, discipline, and self-belief. Psychologists call this belief in your own ability to meet challenges or get the job done self-efficacy. And when you're able to transform a weakness into a strength, you are considered to have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And certainly, if you want to live your dreams, you need to be growth-minded. Now, I could point to plenty of research showing what tends to make people much more successful in life. I could go through the neuroscience behind the patterns of behavior and the need to create new neural pathways, new habits, and shifts in behavior. But all of that explaining, all of that psychological and scientific information will probably do very little to boost your belief in yourself and in your possibilities. Hearing about people or witnessing other people who have pushed past unbelievable odds with determination, discipline, and sheer will, those stories will have a far greater impact on building your belief muscle, which is why I shared these stories today. Let these stories inspire you and know that what you want is possible. We all have struggles we have to navigate, but anything worth having is worth the effort. If you have a dream that just keeps showing up in your mind, but you haven't taken action on it yet, why? What are you waiting for? What excuses are you making? You will gain more clarity and more confidence by taking action, even if it is just a tiny step forward. You cannot bring your dreams to life by merely thinking about them. You got to get into action, just like these three men did. There are tremendous possibilities waiting for you when you step out in faith and combine disciplined action with determination. That's it for this episode. I'll be back with you again in 2 days. Thanks so much for joining me here today. If you want some help achieving your goals, you can grab the Success Bundle linked down below or head over to my website, KimKelleyThompson.com, where I have several free resources to help you. If you like what you've heard today, please consider hitting that subscribe button and join me throughout the week for episodes that will help you make your dreams your reality. I'll be back again soon with another edition of Shift or Get Off the Pot.